As we continue our series on my favorite tapping phrases which have the biggest impact, today I'm going to be sharing with you a phrase that is super useful when we are frustrated by the rate of our healing and transformation. And of all of the phrases I use, this is the one that is most likely to elicit laughter from my clients in a good healing way, and I can't wait to share that phrase with you and how I use it. This is Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 551, originally aired March 29th, 2023. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we are going to be talking about another one of my favorite tapping phrases as part of the series on my favorite tapping phrases, so it's easier for you to get more out of your tapping. Today's phrase has everything to do with the frustration that comes up in the transformational process. Before we do that, two quick announcements. Number one, we have a free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. All you need to do is go to tappingqa.com, click on the big blue button. If you happen to be listening to this right now in the website, in the upper right-hand corner is another one of those blue buttons. Enter your email address, and for the next 10 days, every single day, I will send you a little bite-sized tapping tool to make it easier for you to eliminate self-sabotage. Then at the end of 10 days, you can take the one that you love the most and use it over and over again. Secondly, I want to send a big shout out to all of the supporters of the Tapping Q&A podcast. These are people who voluntarily support the show so that we can continue to provide you this amazing quality content. They receive some great bonuses. If you'd like to be a part of that amazing community, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support, and you can find all of the details there. One of the things that happens in the transformational process is it's very easy for us to become frustrated with the transformation we are going through and the rate in which that transformation is happening at. And the reason this is the case is because we are in a position where we have clarity about what we want. We have clarity about how that will benefit us. We have clarity about how we're going to lose the bad things about our current circumstance. And there's a part of us that just wants to be there right now. And at the exact same time, we can be in a situation where we recognize the fact that it's something that is unfolding. You know, I never want to be in a circumstance where I'm getting some quick fix cotton candy high of a solution only to have it evaporate quickly, to have a sugar crash afterwards. And the same thing can happen in transformation. We can have this moment that feels like this huge piece of insight, and there is energy and there is clarity. But because it's not something that is super grounded, because it's not something that is at our core, but is more on the surface, it's something that can disappear very, very quickly. And that causes us problems in transformation because, one, we're not getting the transformation we want, and two, it puts us into a position where we doubt the tool set that we're using because we're not having the progress that we want, or we're not having the progress last in a way that we would like it to last. And so as we engage, we recognize intellectually that it is a process. But just because we intellectually engage with the fact that it's a process doesn't mean that we actually have to like the fact that it's a process. Which gets us to, and this is part 3, my third favorite tapping phrase that I like to use with clients. And that phrase is, I recognize the fact that this is a healing process, and I'm tired of the fact that it always has to be a process. And oftentimes when I introduce that phrase to a client for the first time, it's not someone that I've worked with before, it's the first time we've bumped into that particular issue, there is almost always a laugh of recognition inside of that. And if you look at, that particular phrase, in a lot of ways, what we're doing is it's a very particular construction of, I give myself permission and I recognize the fact. So I recognize the fact as phrase number 1. I give myself permission as favorite phrase number 2. And so I'm looking at it in this particular way. And so it becomes, I recognize the fact that this is a healing process, and I give myself permission to be frustrated, disappointed, and overwhelmed that everything has to be a process. And oftentimes, I'm not doing it now because we're on the podcast, but oftentimes it's not that I am frustrated that it's a process, but I might use a profanity-laced phrase in that particular spot to clearly articulate my frustration with the fact that something is a process. But for me, just that simple phrase construction, I give myself permission to recognize this as a process, and I give myself permission to recognize the fact that I'm allowed to be frustrated by what is going on. What that does is that's such a clear recognition of where we are, where we would like to go, and being gentle with ourselves in the process. And just using that super simple phrase, that super simple recognition of it's a process, and I hate the fact that it's a process, for me, that creates so much space, that creates so much liberation, because I'm able to go, okay, yeah, it would be really great if this was fixed right now, but I want this for the long term. And oftentimes, I will add those tapping phrases onto it, I recognize the fact that this is a process. I give myself permission to be frustrated by the fact that it's a process. I also recognize the fact that I am not looking for some quick fix cotton candy high of transformation that quickly evaporates. Instead, I want deep, long-lasting, sustainable transformation. There's a part of me that wants that transformation to happen right now, because I simply want better. There's a part of me that wants that transformation to happen right now because I'm so tired of doing all of the work. But I am willing to engage with this process for as long as this process needs to go so that I can have that long-term transformation. I can be frustrated by the short-term prospects of this taking a long time, and I can celebrate the long-term success of what is going on. And so you can see in that little impromptu tapping script there, like that's the way I tap. That's the way I tap with my clients when we bump into this. And basically all I'm doing is I'm taking those ideas of, I give myself permission to recognize it's a process and be frustrated with the fact that it's a process. And all I'm doing is I'm just putting flesh onto the bones of that idea by just more clearly articulating, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm frustrated by, this is what I want, this is why the path that I'm on is good. And by doing that, again, it just creates space. I can just, even as we're doing it right now, and I'm not tuning into a particular issue, I can feel decompression in my chest as I think about it in this particular way, because it makes it so much easier to engage with the reality of the healing process. And the more grounded I am in the big picture aspect of the healing process, the easier it is for me to tap in the moment. So, favorite phrase number 3 is, it's a process, and I'm frustrated by the fact that it always has to be a process. So feel free to introduce that into your tapping. I'd love to hear how you add that in, what sort of tail enders come up, how you do that. If you're listening to this in the website, just drop in the comments down below. You can always reach me at support@tappingqna.com. I love hearing your insights on all of this. If you know someone in your life who is continuing to explore transformation and tapping, feel free to pass this along to them. It might make their tapping experience a little more fruitful as well. Again, don't spam your inbox and send it to everybody in the world, but you might know 1 or 2 people who this would make a real difference for. And as we always say, our marketing budget is your word of mouth. It would mean the world to me, and it would actually be the highest compliment you could pay to me and my work is to pass it on to someone else because you think it would be helpful to them. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast in podcasting parlance. Subscribe or follow is free. Yes, there is audio that you pay subscriptions for, but most podcasts are free, and this is one of them. So everywhere you find audio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you get audio, search for Tapping Q&A, click subscribe, click follow, and most importantly, turn on those notifications so each week when a new piece of content drops, you are notified right away. If you got questions, you got comments, things you'd like us to cover in the future, I'd really encourage you to do that. Also, If you search out Tapping Q&A on YouTube, we're putting up a bunch of fun new videos on a regular basis. You might want to check that out. Let me know how I can be helpful. Support at tappingqa.com. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli and Tapping Q&A.